The Velocette carnage continues. I have separated the engine from the gearbox and that unit from the rear drive, which is up here. And I had to take off the exhaust box, separated the clutch from the gearbox, just to see what everything is like. The rear drive does just come off if you pull out these little bushes that hold it in place. These are bronze in here. So that's the rear pivot. It seems okay. I don't think that's worn. On the end here, there's a sort of cone or a sort of domed cover that fits on there. That felt seal goes on the other side of that. I've just put it in there so I don't lose it. Apparently a lot of people try to prise those out, but what I ended up doing was gripping the universal round here with a pair of smooth pliers and just sort of pulling on it and just gently tapped it out. It's not in there very tight, it just popped out. That gives access to the universal, which feels good. It's solid, there's no play in that at all. The splines are all good. The rear drive feels really good. There's no slop or knock or anything like that in it. Don't know if this one is the same. That one's the same as well. So I'm guessing those are pretty robust. So this is all good. Even the brake shoes look good. There's almost a 1/4 inch, I guess, of brake material on there, so I think those might be new. This will just need a degrease. I need to go out and buy cans and cans of carb cleaner or something, degreaser, clean all of this, re-grease what needs re-greasing. Same with the U-joint, just give it a really good clean. And then, I'm not sure if this is greased or oiled. I just need to look into that, figure out what the right stuff is to use there. But that is all good. I'm not going to polish this or anything silly like that, but I will clean it a bit better, just wipe off most of the grime. Engine and gearbox. Well, no, let's start with the exhaust. That's the silencer. Surprisingly heavy. In fact, I should check that with the new one that I've got. But this is fine. Again, I will just give it a clean. I will give it a coat of probably just matte black paint. And that's just to protect it. I think it's far less likely to rust. It'll last longer. It's not really seen. It's underneath the bike, so it shouldn't look too out of place. I think those are the original clips and things. So that should all clean up nicely. That's the gear selector. Gearbox all looks good. Again, no wear on the splines that I can see. Everything rotates nicely. That's in neutral. I don't know which gear is which, to be honest. Can't see any damage on the teeth. Everything feels good. It's a bit hard to do with one hand because you need to, there we go, rotate it. I can't move this one by hand. This, again, the oil in there was really clean, which is, again, a good sign. I've got rags and cloths all over the place. So again, that just needs a really good flush out and a clean. Just need to make sure I don't lose these little dowels. It should be fine. There was no water in the oil. Same with the engine, there was no water in that oil, which is good. Now that, I have to figure out where that's come from. I think that is one of the little rubber bushes. Might be the one that's fallen out of here. One of these is sort of missing. I think it's the remains of one of those. But I have to look in the parts book. I'm not sure these were originally rubber mounted like that. I'll have to check. I've got a spare one that looks original. I'll see. Is that something somebody's done to modify it? The clutch housing and the starter housing. So this is the starter lever. I think to get all of this back together, I'm going to need to take that off. There's a trick to that, I believe, but hopefully we can figure that out, because this is on a spring and that spring has springed. So how I get all of that back together, I'm not quite sure, but there will be a way. This is the clutch. I guess that's the clutch basket. You can see a little bit of wear on it, but it's not worn through. There are little notches on it, but it's not too bad. So I don't need to take any of that apart. All of this will get a good clean, of course. The clutch. Yeah, here's another piece you have to be careful you don't lose. So this is the clutch lever here, operated by a cable. And you can see what it moves is this little plunger. And I think there's 2 or 3 of them in there. Might be 3. And there's slightly different lengths for different years. But that's what operates the clutch. That little, what is it, 1/8, maybe a little bit bigger plunger, which operates on the middle here, which compresses all the clutch springs. So they're all in there. The plates, yeah, 1, they're oily, and 2, you can see where they've been wearing on the edges. So I've got new ones of those. I'll replace those. Maybe the clutch springs. Can't remember if I got new springs, but that should sort the clutch out. So again, just a good clean. And again, I'm not going to paint any of the frame or anything. I'm just going to get all the muck off it and oil it up. Things like this. I do have a new handle. I'll replace that, because that's the sort of thing that would just wear out over time, and you used to be able to get replacements from the factory. So, you know, it's reasonable that that would have been replaced in its lifetime a few times. So I will replace that. That's the clutch. Rear shocks I've removed. Again, these just need to go through the parts washer, have a good clean and a re-grease. The bushes all seem good, so that's nice. Now the engine. I did drain the oil from the sump, but I forgot to tip it forwards to get all of the oil out, so now that's all over the bench. As you can see, it's clean, which is good, and there was no water in it. Again, this will all need a good clean up, but another piece of really good news. There's good news and possibly bad news, I'm not sure. But now I've got the setup, it's all blocked up and wedged. I can measure the end float on the crank, and I think when I did it before, everything was just sitting on the floor, so it was all a rough measurement, and I got about 15 thou. If I carefully move this, you can see it is about 13 thou. Now the book says that the factory spec was 3 thou to 8 thou, I believe. The book talks about a worn one having more like 20 to 30, and once you start getting over 30, then you need to start doing something about it. So this is fine. I do not have to touch that, which means I don't have to pull that apart and replace the thrust washer and things. I could still think about doing that while I've got it in this state, but I suspect it's better to just clean up what's here and leave it. Apart from one thing, which is this gear. That seems a little bit loose, and I'm not sure if it should be. Or if that's a problem. I imagine that is a problem, because you normally don't like things like that rattling around. I'm not sure what you can do about it. Is it possible just to fix this without having to take the whole thing apart? I'm going to need to look in the book again, the technical notes, and see what it says in there. pistons just need a bit of carbon taken off the tops. And the tappets, I haven't looked at the tappets in the cam. I need to take those top covers off, just see what's going on in there, but I think they should be okay. Probably need to soak up that oil before it goes any further, and then I can think what I'll do is I'll stand this up on its end, support this on blocks because there's a couple of studs at the bottom so it won't sit flat on that, and take the sump off so I can get to the oil pump strainer and clean all of that, see what the state of the inside of the sump is. Going by everything else, I think it might be reasonably clean. The other thing is the rear wheel. I need to think about, do I want to get into the bearings in there just to give them a clean and grease? They sound fine. So that is something I could do later. This tyre, turns out it's a Yokohama, and I think there was sort of a cut on it, so I'm going to just buy 2 new tyres for it. I think that's easier. I'll order new tyres, probably those Mitas ones. They seem to be the easiest to get and they'll be suitable. There's 2 types I can fit. The R18s, there's not much choice. There's one which says it's better for rougher roads and one which says it's good for smooth roads. So I'm not sure which one I should get, but given we live out in the countryside, I'm suspecting the one for the more rougher roads might be better. It's just the tread pattern is a bit chunkier rather than being more, you know, smooth like that. Yeah, I have to try and remember how hard it is to get the bearings out of there. I don't think it's too bad because I've done it on the other one. But yeah, it's sort of, it's at the point where it's, well, if it's in bits, what should you do? But to be honest, it's pretty easy to take these apart. You know, they're very light. They come apart easily. There's five long studs and these 2 short ones at the bottom that hold the, you know, the engine to the gearbox assembly. So that comes apart pretty easily. I think I better clean up that oil spill before it gets worse. I've got the sump off. I did have to take off that steady bar because that seems a bit bent. So when that's on there, you can't get a tube socket in there to get to those studs on the front. I really like using these little tube spanners now. They work perfectly on this because they're thin enough to get in there, and you can turn the other end with a spanner. And I find that they're far less likely to round off the nuts or slip, even with these little ones. Taken off that oil bypass pipe as well. That shouldn't be there. That's where the oil filter piping needs to go. And this is the oil pump and the oil pump gauze. That all looks really clean. There is some sludgy stuff in the bottom. It doesn't look great. It looks like metal flakes. So and that seemed to be under where this was. Here's the drain. This goes this way around. The drain was at the bottom. So that's kind of under the pump. So I need to figure out where that's come from, if that is actually dust. Is it metal dust? It's really hard to tell. Yeah, it looks like it. and maybe that's from that gear on the front wearing, so I may need to do something there. I think that's where I'm going to leave it now. Time to go in for dinner, and I think I'll come back out later and do a clean up, put everything away and sort things out. My radiator is still soaking, seems to be doing the trick, and my fuel tank's still full of evaporust, which is also doing the trick. I'll leave that in there till I'm ready to do the red coat. Probably wait till a really hot day, because what I'll do is flush it all out with boiling water, and then you use acetone. I need to make sure I've got enough acetone to get it all nice and clean and dry, and then you put the red coat in. And yeah, just I need to buy cans and cans and cans of brake cleaner, parts cleaner. And I've decided if I can avoid it, I won't do anything about the crank end float. It's fine. To get to that, you have to take all of this apart, take all the pistons off and the gudgeon pins out and all of that kind of thing. And if this is all original, I figure it's done 55,000 miles and it's only got 13 thou off end float, so I'm never going to do that kind of mileage on it. It'll be fine for the use I'm going to put it to, I believe. Just had a bit of a clean up, put things away. It's getting messy again. I think the biggest worry on this is that where this gear is on a spline shaft. I had a look at my disassembled one, and you can see that's this end, and this is that gear, and that should be splined onto there, and that's a tight fit. There's no wear in that. So I think what I can do relatively easily is take this off, get that gear off there, see where the wear is, if it's on the shaft or if it's on the gear. If it's on the gear, I can probably replace it with that other one. If it's on the shaft, I think what I'll have to do is just repair it, maybe with some Loctite. There's special Loctite for exactly that sort of problem. I mean, the bike was obviously running like that. It's probably not good. Eventually it's going to eat itself away, but I think with the Loctite in there, that should help. Because the only other alternative would be getting another crank and redoing all of that. I can't use the one I've got because I think this is the wider bearing at the end. This width changed over the years, and I think this is the bigger one. But yeah, this is always the problem when you start digging into these things. You find things wrong. Whereas if you hadn't looked, it would probably still do thousands and thousands and thousands more miles. And the truth is, I'm not going to do that many miles on it. I don't even have a bike license, so I can't do that many miles on it at the moment. So yeah, I'll go see what the books say about that. I really don't want to have to take all of this apart because it's just a pain, and the chances of me damaging something are quite high. Yeah, I've got a little bit of brake cleaner. I just gave it a quick try. Got the sump back on, so it's all draining into the sump. Should probably put the drain plug back in though before I try and spray too much of this around. But I think with a decent amount of cleaner and the little toothbrush, I can get most of this gunk out of there and flush it all out, get it all perfectly clean again. Flush out all these oil hoses as well. Make sure they're all good. Chuck it back together with new gaskets, which I've got. Hone the cylinders. Light lap of the valves. I do need to check the tappets still, but I'm going to have to get into there to check the clearances anyway. when it all goes back together. Now I need to check out the points and the electrical to see what's going on there, if that's all good. But, I think it's fixable.